Yeah, they're taking a very calculated approach to this whole disclosure thing. What their agenda really is, in my personal opinion, is to gather information, gather intel from the general public just to appease us. In other words, keep us, hey, give us your information. We'll take a look at it. To be quite honest with you, they see, hear, smell, taste, touch everything that exists, not only on the planet, in the atmosphere, as well as outside of our Earth atmosphere. So they know everything that's going on in real time, nonstop. So a lot of the times when somebody's reporting, or 99% of the time somebody reports something, they've already known about it, probably even have better intel on it than the person that's reporting it. But they're there just to be a doorstop. In other words, you come here, okay, great, hand us the information, and we'll pass it on. But they're not really doing any deep research into any of the reported claims or reported sightings that they've been getting. What they're here to do is to pacify the general population, while behind the scenes, what they're really doing is analyzing data that they've captured on their own intelligence. And so it's just another way of pacifying people. Unfortunately, they're not going to really dig too deep into it. Don't look for any big reports to come out of Arrow anytime soon. And if they do come out with a report, it's going to be very, very ambiguous, and it's not going to make any hard, straight claims. No, it's starting to really break down. I mean, people that used to hear me talk about UFOs and aliens and life on other planets, 10, 15, 20 years ago, are now all coming back to me saying, hey, I can't believe it. You were right the whole time. So they're starting to really believe it, and they're starting to ask more questions. So even though we're not getting the kind of disclosure we actually want from the government, we are getting the fact that, they're talking about it enough to where now people are saying, oh, this is actually real. There are potentially UFOs and beings from other planets and so forth and so on. So now it's an open discussion. Even when I'm in restaurants, sometimes I hear people sitting around talking about UFOs and UAPs and aliens, whereas before, a decade ago, I would never hear a conversation like that openly in an open public place. So, it's just gradually, drip by drip, people are becoming more aware and more understanding and opening their minds more to the reality that we're not alone. And they're starting to ask more questions. So the benefit of all of this, Arrow and ATIP and all these other programs, the benefit that we do have at least is the fact that people are becoming more open to this information. Well, one of the advices that I have is to really a bit of advice I have, I should say, is to really scrutinize the government's version of the facts. If somebody's just getting into this and they're basing their perspective only on what the Pentagon releases or what government press release says, then what they're going to find is they're really just following an agenda, which always is about follow the money. And so let me start with the government agenda first. The government agenda is to make money, and it always is. It's all about money and power. And how does that work out in this particular case with UFOs and UAPs? Well, first of all, let's look at this. They renamed UFO to UAP, right? So they've taken they didn't want to be labeled as tinfoil wearing hat crazies like they told us we were. So they changed the acronym to UAP. That's number one. Number two, unfortunately, we've gone around the world already and brought democracy to a lot of nations. And through that method of bringing democracy to nations and taking over their resources and installing puppet dictators, we've really generated trillions of dollars and a lot of money through wars that were kind of really initiated on our own part. And there are no more countries to invade, and there are no more resources to steal. I'll just be quite frank with you. And so now it goes to, hey, well, what are we going to do now to continue to keep funding this war engine? Well, we got to make the Space Force. And so we're going to create this Space Force. We're going to relabel these things UAPs. And they're now a national threat. They're an international global threat to security even. We know that for a fact that, veterans have come forward and testified in one of the very first disclosures that these vehicles have showed up live at flights. Flights are nuclear silos way out in the middle of nowhere, all around the world, not just in America. And they've shown up in broad daylight, and they've actually deactivated nuclear codes on live nukes. They didn't activate them, they deactivated them, sending us a message that, hey, you guys aren't going to use these even if you wanted to. And so they realized, hey, let's flip this. We know they've showed up, but we're going to turn this into a negative. They can access our nukes. They can destroy the planet whenever they're ready. We should be afraid of these beings. And so in order to do this, we're going to need to fund trillions of dollars of U.S. tax dollars into this Space Force. Now, when you analyze what they're really doing, they're saying we've run out of places to invade. We have no more wars to fight. So now we got to take the war to space. And these beings are our next natural enemy. And so they're going to use a fear tactic to make the hearts of Americans flutter, to get us to think that there's a threat in space that's coming to Earth to destroy us. And we have to now unify together to fight against this alien race, whoever they are. And what we have to be aware of is that a lot of these UAPs, even like the Tic Tac incident, probably not UFOs from outer space, to be quite honest with you. The ones that are buzzing our ships and our Navy vessels and buzzing pilots in the sky, most likely, not all, but most likely the majority of them are ours. Black budget programs that have been funded with no congressional oversight, that are being seen in the skies. And eventually what might happen, I'm not saying will, but might happen, is they may do another one of these Gulf of Tonkin incidents. You can remember Vietnam War. They lied about the Gulf of Tonkin incident to initiate the Vietnamese War. And in my mind, what they're doing is brewing up to the point where they'll take one of these UAPs that are black projects and have it appear to attack a ship, or maybe even actually attack one of our own ships, in order to drive more funding and revenue towards that Space Force and build space weapons for space, which gives them total space dominance over the entire planet. And so that's one thing we have to be aware of when we're looking at the narrative of only focusing on the government's perspective. I mean, like Grush said, we have vehicles not of this world and bodies, fully intact bodies. So where are these things? Well, they're in an underground base somewhere being reverse engineered. And, we're converting them into new, high-tech, obviously they're, black budget vehicles that are flying around these, TR-3B and the Aurora projects and all these other projects that are supposed to exist that are really, obviously not being held out front and saying, hey, guys, this is our new technology. This is what we've got. Because if they do that, people are going to say, hey, well, we want this technology because it can be utilized for things in civilian society that can make our lives better. So that's why they keep these things tucked away. They want to use them as war machines only and not give that technology to the people who deserve it. And so when you're talking about information that you can take a look at, you can watch After Contact, which is actually on Forbidden Knowledge TV. It's hosted by Nick Pope. And that show is talking about, we're already admitting that aliens exist and that these UFOs are real and that we have been getting visited. So let's stop pretending like we don't know that's happening, and let's talk about now what happens after contact is made. And then there's a host of people that come on the show from various different areas of science and research and language and law and everything else to hypothesize ways that we can handle the fact of the point of after contact. We know it's here, we know it's existing, and mankind moving forward in collusion or collaboration with these people. What does that look like? And then, of course, you have Dr. Stephen Greer, who has a lot of documentaries on Amazon Prime and Netflix that have hit #1 multiple times, which talk about, for example, the newest one, The Lost Century, which talks about all these suppressed technologies that we're not getting access to that have been discovered from reverse engineered, technology from these beings, and now have even gone into these new spaceships that even exist that are, of course, hold technology that would free up mankind's problems for energy, for gravity, for water, and everything else. But they're holding these technologies away in these black budget, undisclosed projects. And it's really unfortunate. So, but you can look at Dr. Stephen Greer's work. You can look at shows like After Contact. You have to be aware of some of these UFO accounts and UFO sites that are online. I don't want to name them, but some of them are just utilizing the fame of it for agenda-based to get likes and views and generate revenue and money for themselves. There's a few YouTube accounts that just make up stuff or post stuff that's not real or use AI images. I've seen AI now used so much to generate interest and views. It's like clickbait. And then they just generate the view and they've made money off of your view. And then, but the information is false. And then those images, unfortunately, and those video clips have been getting passed around. Some have gone viral and they're totally fake. They're just made by AI. So there is a lot to sort through, which is why you want to go to watch shows like by, anything we have on Forbidden Knowledge TV or your network, Dr. Bullard, or even like I say, Dr. Stephen Greer. Then you have an opportunity to probably get as close to the truth as possible. But there is a lot of fake stuff out there, and there's so many AI images being passed around now as real UFOs and real video clips of UFOs that are just totally fake. Sure. And what you're going to see is things are going to have to get slightly worse before they get better for us, because that's just the process of change and a paradigm shift. It's not that it's going to be all, a cakewalk all the way through until it shifts into a whole new economic type of a system, and a whole new slew of industries come out that are basically based on free and green and true help for the people of the world. There's going to be a process in between where things are going to get a little shaky, and people have to be aware of that, be prepared for that as well. We know that when the global sickness took over the planet, everything got shut down, and that, of course, crashed the stock market and everything else. So that was a period of time where you saw, okay, the world literally hit the off switch. Everything came to a complete halt, and then a switch was turned back on and everything came back. So my question is, well, if that can happen, well, every industry was shut down at the same time. Why can't we begin to shut down individual industries over a period of time? You give them a 4 to 5 year span to shut down and bring a new one up at the same time, right? You get out of, like, for example, these electric vehicles, they're killing the planet. Electric vehicles are the worst things that they ever invented on this planet. The lithium batteries and the cobalt, this is forced child labor coming out of Africa. Kids are using their hands to dig the ore out of the ground with their bare hands, and they're dying in these mines and in the middle of Africa. And then you have the fact that these batteries are toxic. They're more toxic than an engine block. It's better to have an engine block in the soil than it is to have a battery. And there's no recycling of these batteries because there's so many different versions of the battery, because they were made by open source, so everybody made a different kind. So the true thing here is to move into hydrogen-powered cars, which is where everything is going to go. Everything eventually is going to be hydrogen-powered. They'll use electrolysis to extract the hydrogen atoms from water, and that'll be pushed into the chamber for combustion, and we'll have clean running vehicles that way. But that's coming in the future. Electric cars are going to completely die out. But these things, you need to shut down the EV market, give them 5 to 10 years, and bring hydrogen up while that's going down. It's not going to end the world. They have these concepts in their mind like, oh, if we do this, everything is going to come to a halt. Millions of people will be out of work. The economy's going to crash. Well, you guys turned the switch off and we closed the whole planet down and then turned it back on again. So there's no more fear in my heart, at least, that closing down an entire industry is going to collapse everything anymore. Now I know for a fact that that's not the case, but people seem to have forgotten already. We turned the planet off and turned it back on again. So that means we can do that with anything we want. Well, with the 0 point, it's an interesting opportunity for us to really bring electricity and freedom to the entire planet. And so obviously, once you get a third world country to level up and become a first world country, then they're afraid that the power struggle will shift, and the boot will come off that country's neck, basically. And so that's why the 0 point's being suppressed so hard. There's a lot of other things out there that we can be working on as well, though, like perpetual motion generators, which have never truly been fully successfully done, but I believe that they are possible. There's a couple that have been taken over by eminent domain by the government, so we know that they can be created. And there's one a rudimentary one that I created myself that literally generates electricity enough to charge a phone or turn on a light bulb. It's got a problem that I need to engineer with torque and gear ratio, right? But these things are possible. Imagine having a magnetic generator that once you start it, the only electric charge you need is a little kick to start the generator. And then from there, it never turns off. And it's silent and generates electricity nonstop. It's not completely silent, but it's, maybe, a half a decibel or so. And so these are things that can power people in the farthest reaches of even the jungle and give them electricity. And it's totally clean because all you have to do is just keep the ball bearings oiled every now and then, basic service to keep it running properly. And then, and of course, solar panels, which, like you say, harnessing the sun's power. The solar panels we have now are garbage. And I learned this because I invented this battery. It's a specialized AGM battery that can power a small house for about 4 days without being recharged, but it can also trickle charge from solar, and then it can also rapid charge when your power comes on. It's designed for brownouts. And through this process of creating this battery, I discovered that the solar panel I was trying to utilize only had a 15% maximum conversion ratio. And I'm like, 15%? Why is this not converting at 70, 80, 90%? I can understand some loss in the conversion process, but not that much. So I started looking. I said, maybe it's this product maybe it's this company I'm using. So I started looking for more solar panels. And every company I went to get solar panels, some of them were even 3%, 4%, 2%. I even found one that was 1% conversion. And I'm going, why are these panels not converting electricity? And so I contacted one company, and they sent me the link to a government page. And basically it's a government order. No, it's a political order that they put into place. They got it passed a long time ago. And basically this bill bans the use of solar panels that can convert higher than 15%. And this has gone around the entire planet. There's no company that you can find on this planet that will give you a solar panel that actually converts power higher than 15%, which is the craziest thing I've ever seen. So they've got the boot on our neck, even with the solar panels. If we can get solar panels to do what they're supposed to do at 75, 80%, all of a sudden, you have all the clean energy you need. You can take a small amount of area out of Colorado where nobody's living, like a valley, and cover it with solar panels that have the right capacity for conversion, and you can power the entire United States for free. That's all we would need. But again, the powers that be, they put this limitation. They know this, so they put a limitation on solar panels conversion rates. So these are some of the things that, need to be bypassed. We're working on other technologies as well. There's a crystal that can actually store oxygen. And so this crystal can store oxygen, and it can also generate power when you apply pressure to it. So it can store oxygen and it can create power, or it gives off power or energy, really. It gives off energy when you apply pressure to it. And it can be utilized even in an air tank. So air tanks can be reduced by 2/3 the size and weight, and increase the amount of oxygen supply by 2/3 more. And it's just a crystal that has the capability of harnessing and holding in oxygen and releasing it on a steady rate. And it can also, the same exact crystal can release electricity or energy, which can be converted into electricity. So these are some of the technologies that we're working on, and looking forward to bringing to open source. One thing that we're not going to do is we're not going to try and go for patents on this, because going for a patent would be a suicide mission. Or they're just going to eminent domain your idea and throw it on a shelf, and it'll never get out to the general public. And the problem we have with this idea and this concept of what you're talking about is, trying to sustain an empire for eternity is impossible. And if you don't believe that, just look at history. There is no one empire that has persisted forever. All empires seem to rise and fall. And so when you have especially a dark empire, the chances of it sustaining for eternity are pretty slim, because at the end of the day, people get fed up. It's our natural instinct to fight against, adversity, and to persevere above the darkness. It's just a natural instinct. We may go through cycles where we are, allowing ourselves to be oppressed for a period of time, but even that has a time limit, because people also get to a point where they say enough is enough. And so what America has to do is they have to realize that the big brains in this country, a lot of them are imported brains on the, I think it's the SB1 visa or whatever it's called, that allows these people who to come in here with the minds for science and technology and help build or create. But even at a point, these people are not going to want to come here anymore. They're going to want to stay in their home countries and continue to develop over there. So we've got to be very careful here in this country to not allow ourselves to, like you say, get leapfrogged by other third world nations that become first world nations, just because they're willing to make the adjustments and changes that we're not willing to make. Even something as simple as all of our government websites in America are the worst websites I've ever seen in history. These websites must be created by, by monkeys. I don't know if they can't even be. Grade school kids can make better websites than these websites that we have here. So, something as simple as changing our own websites which are horrible. I remember when Obama was president and they had the Obamacare. They kept crashing. You couldn't even go on the website and fill out the forms. So something is simply even changing that infrastructure, that digital infrastructure. It completely needs to be wiped out and changed over to something totally new and upstream. So upscale. Yeah. So we have to. We're falling behind at an enormous rate. And the only thing keeping us in our position right now is the military strength and the fear of the military. Other than that, we'd already have been taken over. Yeah. We definitely have to rise up a lot more. You've heard me say before that, mankind is still a baby trying to learn how to crawl and walk. I think we're crawling now pretty good. We just got to really stand up and take some really good, strong steps because we've got to get to the point where we claim our birthright, which is a higher level of wisdom, understanding, and consciousness. Right now, I think the majority of people at their heart really have decent or good intentions, the majority of people. But the problem that we still have is we're so easily swayed to and fro by one agenda or one idea or concept or another. And it gets us so distracted that we lose sight of our true, pure loving self. At our core, I believe the majority of people are pure and have pure love in their heart and want to see things change for the better and want to see themselves change for the better. But we're so susceptible right now to these distractions. And it's purely because of what you just said, the higher level of consciousness, the higher level of wisdom and understanding, different perspective, gaining perspective, being able to separate yourself from your thoughts, understanding that you're not your thoughts, you are the observer of your thoughts, and being able to distinguish that and separate yourself from what your body is physically doing based on the input it's getting, and then being able to make adjustments to yourself and your thinking ability on the fly. And that will change the outcome of where you're headed in this paradigm. And so again, it's more about people learning about who they truly are and how to tap into who they are on the inside and to access that love frequency and to gain that empathy for other people on the outside so that we can move together as a solid unit as people on this planet and regain our birthright, which is not only taking back control of this planet, but also being able to move out into space as well. Yeah, there's just so much that we've gone through. I mean, it's really amazing that, we're still here. That shows how strong we are as people on this planet with so much that has been thrown at us geologically, economically, psychologically, physically, and we are still here and multiplying. So we've shown that we have the strength to persevere through pretty much anything. There's only one last main obstacle for us to overcome, and that's understanding that we are all one and to just love one another as it was, your own brother or your sister. And if we can come to that understanding and really put down this divide and conquer, recognize and discern, like you said, these divide and conquer tactics, which are put out by the political system, the religious systems, and the school systems, and the media, the mainstream media. If we can learn how to discern when we're being attacked with a divide and conquer tactic and put those down, put our boot on that thing and step on it and crush it and get past that, the future for mankind is super, super bright. We will literally excel so far, so fast. It'll be the blink of an eye. It took us 100 years to go from a horse buggy and carriage to putting remote control cars on Mars. And I think just getting past that one hurdle of divide and conquer and recognizing it for what it truly is, and really then pushing that out and saying, no more. And once we do that, I think we can do what we did in 100 years in 20 years. We can really accelerate mankind's progress in a way, and not just technologically, but spiritually and consciously, because that's one of the biggest things stopping us from excelling past a specific point. It's got us just moving ahead, slow, just one drip at a time. But if we can really push that out and get rid of that whole mindset of this divide and conquer, recognize it in everything we see, discern it, and push it away and say, no, I'm not going to allow you to do this to my mind. And then once we get rid of that, we're going to accelerate at a pace that is just unbelievable. Yeah. Stand up and say no. And then we have to begin to, collaborate with each other like we're collaborating. We have to collaborate. We have to stop isolating and get into collaboration. And we have to begin to work together. And we also have to make plans. We have to begin to organize. That's one of the biggest things we're not doing, is organizing as a whole, as a mass of people on the planet, and realizing, how do we change these systems? Well, we have to infiltrate them, right? It's like the old Trojan horse from, the Renaissance era. You have to get inside the gates. And how do you do that? Well, we've got to begin to train people to take on positions of power that are conscious and go on the inside. And when they're inside, then they do what they have to do to break the system down, press the right buttons, expose the right information, whatever it is. But we have to begin to infiltrate these systems in this matrix that exists so that we can break it down from the inside out. We can't keep staying on the outside of these systems and thinking that we're going to have this massive change that just crops up. We have to have conscious people get in and infiltrate from the inside, and then you'll see the curtain begin to fall. That's a little bit about, I think if you get inside and you begin to collapse it, break it down from the inside, it forces a new paradigm. It forces a new system to rise from the ashes. If you're in there, and it's got to be obviously more than just one person. If there's people going in droves that are really trying to go into all these different systems and really collapse these systems, it's like a mission. It's almost like a suicide mission in a way, to be honest with you. But at some point, somebody has to have enough courage to help these systems collapse, and they got to collapse from the inside. Because once they're going down, a new system can rise up from the ashes like a phoenix. And, whoever's listening to this video, they just need to understand that, hey, every single one of us is helping to create this reality on this planet.